children that die because of the Watchtower before refusing blood transfusions because of the Watchtower organization. This is not a good organization to be a part of. The Watchtower organization has flip-flopped over and over again on what it says in regards to its laws that it sends down to you guys to obey. For instance, it used to say that it was against Jehovah to get organ transplants, that it was cannibalism. Is that wrong today? No. It's a matter of conscience for you guys today. So they were spreading lies about that. They flip-flopped on it. You guys might be wondering, why am I out here telling you this? Because I care about you guys and I care about truth. I don't want you to perish. I don't want you guys to believe in a false prophet. I don't want you guys to believe lies. I do truly care about you, about mankind, and about for you to be leading more people astray to this organization rather than pointing them to the truth, pointing them to jw.org, anonymous Bible translators that have mistranslated the Bible, and pointing people to the governing body that is corrupt and has led the children to die for refusing blood transfusions. Not a good organization.
The blood issue in the back of our minds was bothering us because as Jehovah's Witnesses, if we freely gave a blood transfusion to our daughter, we'd be excommunicated, we'd be disfellowshipped. Well, the doctors finally came to our room and it was just like an ultimatum. They said, listen, we know from our records that you're a Jehovah's Witness. We know that you don't take blood transfusions. And the doctor looked me straight in the eye and said, Mr. and Mrs. Blizzard, you have to make a decision, yes or no, whether your child lives or dies. I remember going over to the bed and she had these cords and wires keeping her alive, life support systems, and holding this limp child that was our only daughter, and just going over to the window and looking out and watching the clouds and the sky and just started to weep. And I said, oh God, Jehovah, and I prayed to Jehovah.
We just had a real distinct impression that we were supposed to obey God's law and go by what we had always been taught, and that we were to let our daughter die. And so we just called the doctors back in and told them that we had just had to let her die, that we had to obey God's law.
About a half an hour later, a sheriff deputy came to our room and gave my wife and I both citations, and they told us that a court order has already been issued, your daughter is going to get the blood, and they also warned the staff of the hospital not to allow us to take Jenny out of the hospital.
And we were charged with child neglect and abuse.
The witnesses, there was multitudes of them that came up to the room, just swarmed the room, tried to giving us Watchtower articles about artificial blood, and you just can't let your child take that blood, and just putting this heavy guilt trip on us. The elders were relieved to find out that there was still time to get Jenny out of the hospital, and they would come up to me and say, hey, I've got a plan. We can get her, we can hire a helicopter, we can sneak her out of this hospital, just unhook the tubes, and we're gone. And I said, wait a minute. You can't do that. It's against the law. I'll be charged with murder. They said, that's a chance you're going to have to take. And I just told them, look, I just can't let my child die in that way. And the elders were just so upset. They left in a huff. They were mad. And one of the elders said on the way out, he looked me in the eye and said, you know what? I hope your daughter gets hepatitis from that blood. And that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I was just broken here. My own people, God's organization, turning against me, cursing me, because I just wanted to see my child live. And so they left. And we were all alone. Even my own parents didn't come see us.
I think many times Jehovah's Witnesses have really never thought the blood thing through. It's either right or it's wrong. If it's wrong, the Watchtower Society is guilty of causing the deaths of thousands of people. That's wrong. It's evil.
I think the evil needs to be seen for what it is. It's this concept, this organizational concept, that the organization is everything. You see, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that this organization is God's one channel, that all of God's direction for people on the earth comes through this channel. And the men on the governing body believe it. I believed it. And that's the reason I was party to some things in the past that today I I feel shame to think that I even had part in them.
So we're looking here at a chart that shows the history of accepted blood components. We see prior to 1945, everything was allowed: whole blood, major blood fractions, and minor blood fractions. But then starting in 1945, nothing was allowed. No whole blood, no major blood fractions, no minor blood fractions. Then between 1982 and 2000, they made some changes. Whole blood was still not allowed, major blood fractions not allowed, but minor blood fractions, some were allowed. And then post-2000, whole blood was not allowed, major blood was not allowed, but then they made a flip-flop, and minor blood fractions are allowed, the same way as they were prior to 1945. So does this look like an example to you of increasing light, or rather flip-flopping? Does it appear that Jehovah's behind this? And if you still believe that he is behind it, why did he wait until 1945 to forbid blood transfusions? They were mastered in 1916, yet it supposedly took God almost another 30 years to prohibit them. And then he spent another 55 years flip-flopping on blood fractions.
Did you know that the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the Bible says that it's wrong to get a blood transfusion, even under life and death circumstances? Did you know that their position has changed back and forth on this subject several times? But don't take my word for it. Check out the facts. A question was asked on September the 15th, 1961 in the Watchtower. And here was the question: is it wrong to sustain life by infusions of blood or plasma or red blood cells or the various blood fractions? And the answer given by the Watchtower, the Jehovah's Witnesses: yes, it's wrong. Regardless of whether it's the whole blood taken from one's own body or that taken from someone else's body, whether it is administered as a transfusion or as an injection, the divine law applies. Whether whole or fractional, one's own or someone else's transfused or injected, it is wrong. Do you know that the Jehovah's Witnesses carry a card that directs healthcare professionals not to give them blood? Again, don't take my word for it. Check out the facts. See the card right now for yourself and examine the operative line here. I direct that no blood transfusions be given to me under any circumstances, even if physicians deem such necessary to preserve my life or health. Did you know that a few years later, in 2001, the Watchtower modified their position on blood transfusions? That change now allows Jehovah's Witnesses to take partial blood or blood substitutes under life and death circumstances. Did you know that there are people who made life and death decisions based on the policies of the past? Did you know that adults and children have died based on the earlier policy or interpretation of the Bible? I wonder how they feel about this change. I wonder how their family and friends feel about this change in interpretation.